Afternoon. Present this afternoon, I have Health Minister Honorable Nicholas Steele. Attorney General Dashan Ramdani is joining us via Zoom. We have the COVID-19 Response Coordinator, Dr. George Mitchell, and also Dr. Francis Martin, the Acting Chief Medical Officer. Welcome to all the gentlemen. Members of the media, thank you so much for joining us for this afternoon's press conference. And to you, our audience, whether you tuned in via television, radio, online, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sure many of you are keen to hear what happens with regard to Grenada's state of emergency come April 20th. For that and more, I turn to Honorable Nicholas Steele, who will present an opening statement. Minister Steele?
Good day, fellow citizens. We come yet again to give another update on the state of play with respect to COVID-19 and the challenges which our country and the world are currently going through. In our neck of the woods, we have been able to contain and protect Grenadian citizens from any massive invasion of the virus into our country. For those limited incidents which did occur, we can now report a significant amount of success. But success which still requires us to be guarded and careful, as this disease does not respect national boundaries, nationalities, class, creed, or race. Our latest PCR tests came back all negative. And we currently have only 6 persons still infected with the virus. We are pleased to report that 7 have been medically cleared. Our last positive case was on April 10th. Our medical team has remained resolute and performed outstandingly in the face of the ever-evolving nature of this virus, and I must commend them again. Our successes as a country are built on the foundation of the exemplary work done by our medical personnel, our Royal Grenada Police Force, and the brigades of essential workers and volunteers, and of course, the compliance of our people, with the requirements to maintain our public health safety and security. As Grenada makes progress in the direction of containment and eventual elimination of this virus, we cannot afford to drop our guard. We cannot afford to be less disciplined. We cannot resort to old ways, which would threaten the public health. So far, we have been fortunate that no one has died on our soil. We should give thanks to the Almighty for this blessing. But at the same time, we must respect the virus and understand the possibility of death, which still lurks close as New York and London and several other Caribbean territories, where the loss of life from the virus is seen daily. Our thoughts and prayers are continually with them. This challenge created by COVID-19 is two-dimensional: health and well-being, and the economy and welfare of the people. We have to find a balance between the two, because a people unable to produce cannot maintain good health. Let us not forget that where we are has come at a great price to our economy, and some would say to the psyche of our people as well. But we have and will continue to persevere. We believe that this next week of restrictions and continued surveillance and testing will allow us to determine with a reasonable level of certainty whether or not we continue to have a risk of exposure from within our borders. As such, if all goes well and we maintain our collective discipline, we can expect a measured and cautious approach to a new norm, where physical distancing, face covering, and proper hygiene and other standard precautions that we have been speaking about are maintained. We must remain ever conscious of the sacrifices and cognizant of the fact that it only takes one mistake to put us back on the path to staring down the barrel of a public health disaster. It is on the basis of this principle that we now seek to very slowly ease restrictions to get the economy moving. In those circumstances, therefore, the Attorney General will now announce the way forward for the next week. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Grenada. Good afternoon to all our viewers and listeners. These are not happy times. And in that context, and with that qualification, I will now give you my feelings. We are all hoping to do our part to get us all through this. Now, you would have heard the minister just speak about the next week, and my task is to tell you what we are going to do for the next week. But I must put that the next week proceedings in the context of what happened in Parliament yesterday. You would have realized, all of you looking at Parliament, listening to the news, that both houses of Parliament had a special sitting yesterday. And in that special sitting, among other important matters, both houses of Parliament approved a resolution to extend the life of the declaration of the state of emergency that was made by the Governor General. That declaration that was made by the Governor General was due to expire at midnight on the 19th of April 2020. That's on Monday. The resolution that was passed by both houses will now cause an extension of that declaration, and the state of emergency will now last for a period of 6 months, beginning the 17th of April 2020. Now, it must be made very clear immediately that the government has no intention to allow this state of emergency to remain in place for any longer than is absolutely necessary. And whether or not there will be any restrictions on rights, liberty, freedom of movement will depend on our phased approach and our phased regulations as we go forward. Speaking of the state of emergency, no shorter date was decided upon because we did not want to have to come back to Parliament again. And the 6 months period is really a period that is decided upon by the Constitution when no fixed date is given. But as you heard the minister say, we are heading to a reopening of our tri-island state, a reopening of business and social life, a return to normalcy. And so while the state of emergency has been extended in accordance with the Constitution, by the regulations, we will be engaged in reopening and relaxing on the restrictions which have been imposed on all of us. The medical and scientific community have informed new decisions, and you will hear Dr. Mitchell and the others speak on this. Beginning on the 20th of April, that is on Monday, we will enter into a more relaxed environment as far as the lockdown is concerned. I must say that for the week coming, the next 7 days, a 24 hours lockdown will still be the general rule, but there will be more days for grocery and general shopping, and more businesses will be allowed to operate within the social distancing protocol. More businesses will be opened on more days, but it is hoped and advised that persons will leave their home only where it is necessary to obtain much needed goods and services. So the particular businesses that will be allowed to operate, now much of what has been put in place already will continue to exist, but now we will be allowing bakeries, for instance, to open on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Banks, remittance services. In fact, let me say that the shopping days and the other business days will be on 3 days for the week: Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. On those days, there will be a period of curfew, and that curfew will last for between 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. on those 3 days. So on the morning of Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 a.m., the curfew will be lifted and persons will be allowed to go about and do grocery and other general shopping. So let me return to those businesses. Public servants will continue to operate as they have been operating for the last 3 weeks. The Secretary to the Cabinet will inform those of us who will have to come out to work. Wholesale or retail grocery stores and shops will be allowed to operate on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Accountants will be allowed to carry on their business. They will be considered essential workers for this period. They will be able to meet with clients on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I spoke of bakeries already. Pharmacies and drugstores, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And of course, pharmacies and drugstores will also be accessible on other days for medical emergencies. Banks, remittance services. Farming and fisheries will be allowed to operate on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Veterinary services will also be allowed to operate on those days. Gas station, significantly, hardware stores will be allowed to open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Insurance companies, commercial ports will be allowed to open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Restaurant, but only for takeout and drive-through. Home delivery services, groceries and restaurants will be allowed to deliver to your homes. Before I turn you back to the medical team and the rest of the team, let me speak a little bit on transportation. For the next 7 days, beginning the 20th, it will continue to be the case that there will be no public transportation allowed. Vehicles that come on the road should not carry more than one person in any row of seat in a staggered formation. What I would mean is that you can give your neighbor a ride, but they will have to sit in another row of seat. So if you're driving a car, they'll have to be in the back seat. If you're driving a bus, that is not a commercial bus, there will be one person in every row of seat in a staggered formation. And those are the general changes that will take place in the next week. More of this will be published. You will see it on the television. You will see it on the news generally, and you will see clarity being given to all of this. I know I've said quite a mouthful there, but as we have been doing on GIS and the other media platforms, we have been putting out these notices indicating what are the steps that we have taken and what are the steps that have been changing. And so you will be given clarity on the way forward. And I'm sure the media will also assist us in clarifying and ensuring that members of the public understand clearly what it is they have to do. Thank you very much. Back to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Attorney General Dashon Ramdani. We now open the floor to questions. Before we do that, however, let's go to Dr. Francis Martin, the Acting Chief Medical Officer. Dr. Martin?
Thank you very much, and I must say a heartfelt thank you and gratitude to our citizens of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique for making the job of our medical team such a interesting but worthwhile and successful one. It was solely because of the cooperation of everyone that we're able to sit here today to make those pronouncements. Our epidemiology, our public health nurses at the front line, our doctors and nurses who treat our isolated patients, this is all, I'm pretty sure that they're all echoing the same thank you to our population for being on board with us to get to this point. I am aware, because I have been on the ground for the last couple of weeks, literally in the trenches, and I hear the concerns of people, even colleagues of mine. The fraternity is also concerned about the reason why we are relaxing. And so I would have to be able to say to my people, we're relaxing simply because the science, we followed the science, and the science have coincided with our reality that we have seen here in Grenada. The science indicates that if you have widespread community transmission, that you're going to have 85% of your people getting very mild symptoms, and that 15% will get very sick to end up in hospital, and we have not seen that at all. We've not seen that 15% ending up in hospital. We're not seeing the people that are very, very sick. Our surveillance team was able to do the contact tracing and find the persons, and we are constantly monitoring them, and they've done very well. I want to also remind you that that the decision is based on the fact that the last 2 cases we reported was on the 10th, and we have not seen any since then. From an epidemiological standpoint, once 1 or 2 of the incubation period has elapsed, then you basically can say that you're free of an epidemic. We are well into finishing the first incubation period, and we have had no new cases. So I'm confident that from the preliminary reports that we have been seeing, from the tests that we have been doing at the community level, we are extremely satisfied with the fact that most of our tests, or all of our tests, have been negative, so to speak. And so from our epidemiological standpoint and from our COVID response, the ministry is comfortable with the level of relaxation that has been pronounced. That being said, though, we are going to continue to work diligently over the coming weeks and days, especially when it comes to testing, widespread testing. We are going to expand on this so that we become even more satisfied with what we have been seeing over the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. We'll also have some opening words from Dr. George Mitchell, our COVID-19 response coordinator.
Philo, let me just add to what Dr. Martin said. But first of all, I must say good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon to all of our listeners at home, in the region, and abroad. And like Minister Steele, I'd like to express my condolences to Grenadians who have lost their loved ones in New York, in the UK, etc. I just wanted to add that we are indeed following the science. We are indeed listening to our international partners and our regional experts. And we have gone even further by ensuring that all measures are taken so that we do not get a relapse. We believe that the gains that we have achieved thus far cannot be allowed to roll back. And so even though the science, for example, is telling us that 14 days is enough, and even though we have persons at this time who have done their retesting and are negative, we are not about to say to them, go out and roam the streets. And I know persons are concerned about that, but we are going to continue to quarantine them. And I'm discussing with the team that we should maybe at this stage, at a later stage, test them again, just to make absolutely sure that if the science is missing something, that we are not sort of like caught with our pants down. So I just wanted to give that assurance to our Grenadians, our persons out there that are concerned about the fact that we are maybe looking to open up too quick, but we are doing so out of an abundance of caution. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Do we have any questions from the floor yet? I see, Sherry, you have your hand raised, and Mikey. I'll take Sherry first, and then Mikey will come to you. Sherry, proceed.
Good afternoon to the panelists. I have 2 questions. One is based on what the panel has said as it relates to the relaxing of the regulations, and it has to do with the release from PAHO. Hello? It has to do with the release from PAHO. How do we treat that based on the science and what was just said? That's my first question.
Okay, Sharon, with respect to the release from PAHO, yes, I am very much aware of it. Now remember, PAHO is a Pan-American Health Organization, Pan-American, and that release speaks to the region as a whole. We are aware that not all of the Caribbean countries are in a position where we are right now, and that some of them are still fighting this battle and have not gone over that curve, so to speak. So those are the countries in particular that PAO is addressing, as well as a majority of Latin America, South America. We're not ignoring the statements. We are part of that decision-making process in PAHO. The Director General of PAHO is from an OECS country, and I know her very well. So we are heeding the warning. That is why you hear us still using the words like cautious and diligent and discipline. But based on where we are able to consider what we are considering now.
I'd like for the medical team to clarify. There was information circulating that there were people who went forward to get tested and they were denied. Can we clarify?
I am not aware that there were anyone that came forward to be tested and was denied testing. We are in a situation where we would love to test as many people as possible. Our ability to test has moved from not being able to do widespread to now able to do widespread. As far as I'm aware, we are encouraging as many people as possible to come forward to get tested or call the health facilities to get tested. Certainly, this is what I've been encouraging people to do. I am not aware of that particular matter, but I do hope that if this may have occurred or that there is an opportunity right now, and so I'm encouraging anyone who has those symptoms to actually call in and allow the public health professionals to most of the public health professionals have been actually visiting homes to get tested rather than having people come out from their homes because we still want to maintain the physical distancing. So we're open for business and we're encouraging everyone to call.
Thank you, Sherry Ann. Mikey, you may ask your questions.
Okay, thank you and good day to the panel. Dr. Mitchell somewhat answered one part of my question. Now, I'm happy that we are talking about recovery at this point. In South Korea, the health officials there are trying to solve a mystery as to why 163 persons who were recovered tested positive again with COVID-19, and the same happened in China recently. My first question is, can you be infected with the virus? And the other part of this question is, are we able to tell whether it is error in testing that is resulting in these findings, or is it something else?
This has been a very interesting question asked in the scientific community since the virus has started. Coronavirus is a family of virus that is known to us, but COVID, all being part of the family, there are some intricacies of it that is still open to scientific research. I am aware of those reports. I am aware of people who have, for quote unquote, be reinfected. Now, the science is still learning and is not conclusive yet, but here are the arguments and the discussions that are there going forward. The first question the scientific community is asking, is it true that people are being reinfected? And if so, is it the same strain or is it another one? The other argument among the scientific community is it truly a reinfection or is it a resurgence or reactivation of the virus that was there in the first place? And the reason those questions are being asked is because that's how viruses behave. There are some viruses we know that does that exactly. Herpes virus is one of those. You get it at once and it goes away for a while and you test a second time and it comes back again. So as the science progresses, we will be able to answer that question, hopefully in the not too distant future. But your concern, yes, is there, and we continue to follow the science. However, it is not conclusive yet. Those three arguments are still out there, and we're going to see which one actually will play out to be correct at the end of it.
Mikey, I'm sorry.
Again?
Mikey, can you start your question again, please? We didn't have your audio just now. Can you please restart your question, your second
Okay,
question?
no problem. Okay, so given the explanation that you just gave, Dr. Martin, and I appreciate that clarity, what sort of relationship do we intend on having with the persons who have been cleared of the COVID-19?
Oh, absolute. Good, excellent question. And this is why, as Dr. Mitchell has said, while we have cleared them, they are not outside of our grasp. We are still going to re-engage them, to follow them, to see if that is actually what the case is. So by no means are we going to let them outside of our surveillance window. They're still going to be communicated with. In fact, I will personally communicate with a couple of them over the weekend because I want to do something very specific. But the answer is we are going to continue, and we are prepared to be able to retest them whether or not they have symptoms or not, just to monitor and see what they're doing. Certainly if they have symptoms, we're going to PCR them again. But even if they don't, we're still going to monitor and test.
Can I? Mikey, quite interesting scientific questions. We are going to be writing our own chapter here, by doing those novel things that we're doing, because we think it's prudent, we think it's right to do it. And because this science around COVID-19 continues to evolve, we have to make sure that we do everything possible and then document it. In the same way that the persons or the folks in South Korea and in China are now documenting, we want to put ourselves in a position to say that we have done just that, and those are our results. But we are proceeding extremely cautiously, even outside, as I said, of what has been done in other places. So hence our models that we are developing to ensure just that.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Nancy Maguire, you have the floor. Nancy, you may proceed.
Hello?
Yes, Nancy, we're hearing you. You can go ahead with your questions.
Oh, okay, good. In terms of our testing, I know we've been doing the testing in contact tracing, but I'd like to know if we've tested any health workers and police officers, and if so, how many have we tested?
I am not able to give you the exact number of health workers and the police officer that has been tested. What I can say, however, yes, we have tested health workers who are on the front line, and yes, we have tested police officers.
And with the individual that slipped away on us, the positive case that went to Canada and then the UK, and you made the reports to the relevant authorities, have you had any feedback on that person, if any other people were infected by that person?
The answer to this question is no. I have not been in touch with him over the last few days, but we have no reports at all whether that person infected anybody else.
Nancy, do you have one more question?
Yeah, my final question is relating to the ease of business openings, and I'm wondering if businesses that provide computer services, printing services, and some of those things that students and others may not be able to do at home have been considered, as well as my previous question last week about the postal services.
And Nancy, the reopening or the rebuilding of our economy, I think that's the best way that I can put it, is a structured approach. It's also science-based. The 10th, as was said, was the last day that we found a positive case. 14 days from the 10th will bring us to the 24th, which is Friday of this week. That is why this week is still a week of significant restrictions. But we approached it in terms of food and finance. is what is being allowed to open right now to begin the rebuilding and safety. There will be justification from almost every sector as to why that sector should be one of the first to reopen or so, because all of our sectors contribute in their own way to our economy. And we want to get to that as best as possible. But we need to be cautious on how we do that and make sure that it doesn't become a process of 2 steps forward and then 10 steps backwards. So we are going to be doing it following the science, and we are going to do it following the economics and the humanity that's involved. So the week coming, it's food, it's finance, and as we proceed, we will find the areas that can be opened, whether it is restricted openings for them or whether it is a little more freedom. And so I am looking forward to the day when we're back to, and all of us here, where we're back to as much as possible life as normal. When we are back to 5-day work weeks or 6-day work weeks and Saturdays a half day, and we're all circulating. But in order for us to get there, and because we value that and want to get to that, we've got to do it systematically and cautiously.
Can I, following the science also means maintaining social distancing. I just wanted to reiterate that. And of course, wearing of masks. And I know there's been an extremely strong argument for insisting that business owners and operators, banks, etc., insist that anyone who comes into those places of business, etc., should wear a mask. I don't think it's in law. Some persons think we should make it law, but we are actually believing that persons will heed the call and adhere to this strong ask that we do continue to exercise caution by wearing masks, especially when we're outdoors, especially when we're indoors in business places, and of course, maintaining the social distancing. So those measures, we believe, in addition to, of course, our testing, etc., should get us in a better place to do more relaxing as the time go along.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. AG, I think you wanted to add some comments.
Yes. In relation to indicating the relaxed nature of the approach that we are taking, for instance, as I noted earlier, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, the list of businesses will be allowed to operate. And they'll be allowed to operate between 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 p.m. that day. The curfew, of course, will allow people to go out of their houses at 5 a.m., return home at 7 p.m. Now, for those businesses, previously, you were only allowed to leave your home for medical emergencies to go and see the doctor or go to the hospital. Now, doctors will be allowed to open their offices on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday for ordinary and normal medical appointments. So you can have your clinics on those days. And so persons can be allowed to come out and go visit their doctors for regular checkups and all of that. It doesn't have to be a medical emergency. So we're trying to gradually get to that place where we can return to normalcy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, AG. Akisha, I see you have a question, but I'll just take a couple from Anisha Samuel of The Voice first. Doctors Mitchell and Martin, we're carefully following the science here this afternoon. This question says, what is the number of persons, according to the science, that needs to be tested to determine if we have community spread? And did we conduct that percentage of testing?
Fortunately, because of where we are, we're not doing a research project. So there is no need for the term we call a number to test. There is no magic number to test. We are in a surveillance period where we're looking and searching. It's called a case finding. So there is no magic number that you have to look for to get tested. the country is served best by doing more tests. So the more you do, the better you have an understanding as to really what's happening. The number of tests is not what is used to determine community transmission. What is used to determine community transmission is a case that you find that has had no link at all to travel, or no link to a known case that have traveled. So that is what is used to determine whether there is a community transmission. Someone who has the virus and there is no explanation as to why that person has the virus. So for us, the approach we're going to take over the next coming weeks is test as much people as we can. And here is the reason we're asking people, if you have respiratory symptoms, if you think you may have come in contact with someone, call in to the medical facility, call into the helpline. Your details will be taken, and a decision will be made after we link you up with a healthcare provider to decide. And this is where we are having, again, our doctors on board with us, because our private doctors, for example, we say to them, if you want to get on board with us to help us fight this, we're willing to provide you with some test kits so that you can actually offer those tests to your patient populations. Fortunately, that has already happened. In fact, I personally delivered to a couple of doctors. Dr. Sean Charles have done the same thing. So the point is, as we go forward, we want to test as much as we can to be able to make a determination as to how that virus, or if at all, that virus did penetrate our community.
Okay, another question from Anisha. Given that we have not engaged in widespread community testing, and some persons show no symptoms, and could be outside of the immediate contact tracing, how are we then confident that we are in a position to relax measures?
We are in a position here, rightly stated, because as you conduct your surveillance, there is a process. The process was followed. You identify your case, then you do your contact tracing, you check your contacts, and then you do widespread testing. This is exactly where we are. We followed that to the T. So as of last Wednesday, we started expanding our testing. So today we are 4 days into widespread community testing. It will be ramped up even more in the coming weeks. Each of the district medical doctors have personally asked for the supply of test kits. Our private doctors have asked for the supply of test kits. Our nurses, public health nurses, has been going out to the community. So let the caller know that even if we haven't maximized our community testing yet, we're well on our way to achieve just that.
Are you in a position to disclose what the numbers are in terms of tests conducted to date?
I don't know, Chief, you probably know, 100 and something.
Right. Let me just add to what Dr. Martin said. Just to say that we do have a plan that we've been tweaking. We've been ensuring that we cover, that we get an idea as much as we can going out there using our rapid testing. And we have targeted some specific places going forward. So we have targeted grocery shops. We're going to be targeting gas stations. We're going to be targeting pharmacies. We're going to be targeting all these places, the farmers markets that are opened. We're going to be targeting medical stations that are going to be opened to ensure that we get appropriate numbers going forward. So that I think the caller was asking for that kind of magic number, and in the context Dr. Martin explained. But we believe that if we can do within the next week or two close to 800, 1,000 persons out there, that would sort of like fit the model that she's maybe referring to. So we're gonna be targeting in a very specific way at all the districts, including Carriacou and PT Martinique, to be able to come up with those numbers so that we can safely say that we have covered a sort of like a diverse population. We're going to be going to nursing homes, for example, as well, because we know how deadly the virus has been in that particular age group. So we want to make sure that nothing has happened there. We believe that nothing has happened, but we want to make absolutely sure. And I would sort of like call on Dr. Martin again to explain that screening process that we are about to undertake, because it's a screening process using this rapid test. So Dr. Martin, I want you to explain exactly what is going to be happening.
All right, and before, just to follow up, I've just got my public health nurse that has told me over the last 3 days they've conducted 82 rapid tests already, just over the last 3 days.
Let me add on the PCR. I've been keeping count. I know the gentlemen here have been quite busy making sure that they get the test done. We did 45 tests before we got our PCR machine on island. The first batch we did with our PCR was 47, then 11, and then 13 as of yesterday. So by my count and mathematics, that'd be 116 test results that we've got, and we have some swabs, and so I think by Monday we will have a new batch of results to release, but 116 to date.
So 116 PCR and now 82 rapid. So, yeah. So, I'm going to say something about the rapid test. We must be extremely clear about what this rapid test is saying. It is an antibody test. And it's an antibody is a substance that your body produces that says that you were exposed to a particular virus. So the antibody test does not say that you have COVID virus in you. It says that you were exposed to a virus, and this is your body's response to the virus. So it is an excellent way to screen people, and this is what we're going to be using the test to do, to screen whether someone has had exposure to the virus or not. Checking the antibody test that we have, we did two things. The first we did was validate that we can rely on the results for the test. And so in collaboration with our infectious diseases consultant at the hospital, we ran some tests. We ran those tests on known results. So we ran those tests to see if the rapid test is going to give us the same result as those we already know from PCR. For those that we've done, in 100% of the time, it came back correct. We also need persons to understand that because it's an antibody test and a perfect screening tool, what I wanted to be assured of was whether or not I'm satisfied that that test can actively screen persons as much as I can. The term we use here is specificity. So if the specificity of the test is high, it's an excellent screening agent. This my research on it, spoke with my lab colleagues on it, and I'm satisfied that this test is 99.5 something percent specific. So that means in 99.5% of the time, it is going to tell you that your test is negative. So this is an important thing to understand. If that test says you're negative, you are indeed negative. However, for positivity, we know that the PCR is the gold standard for positive. So any of the tests that become positive, we're not going to rely on that test for positiveness. If it says positive, we're going to do a PCR because to us, that's the gold standard to tell us whether you're positive or not.
Thank you very much for that explanation, Dr. Martin. Akisha, you're next, and then you'll be followed by Johnson Richardson.
Okay, good afternoon. My first question relates to the easement of some of the regulations and so on. One of the greatest challenges is the parish boundaries. So when would we see that being lifted?
With respect to the week coming, yes, there is a freedom of movement on the shopping days, or the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday outside of the parish as well, because we're doing finance, etc. We do recognize that people need to get to banks, and there isn't a branch in every parish. So yes, that restriction would be eased for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday this week coming. With respect to the science on it as well, it is also because we are able to confirm, to the best of our knowledge, that we do not have any particular parish that is exposed or overly exposed or so than others. And while in the past what we wanted to do, while we still didn't have that as well, but we wanted to protect each and every parish. Now we're looking at a statewide initiative.
Okay, I have another question. The U.S. has stopped funding the World Health Organization. How is this going to affect Grenada and by extension the Caribbean?
Well, I think it's going to affect the world if it does happen. There have been opinions expressed, and every nation has the right to make their own decisions. I'm not going to question the U.S.'s decision. I am going to say at a time like this, though, in the same way we as a nation have made sure and fund above and beyond anything public health related, I think we as a world need to make sure that we give support above and beyond to anything public health related. We can decide on and cast blame or do an investigation afterwards. But at this point in time, there are excellent people within WHO and PAHO, very much experienced. And I think the one key point to note is that the decisions of Pan American Health Organization and the WHO are made by its members. It is its very members that make the decisions for those entities.
Thank you, Akeisha. Johnson Richardson, you have the floor.
Good afternoon to your panel. My first question really has to do with, and I would ask that question directly to Mr. Ramdani. You list a number of businesses that will be open in the coming week. I've not heard any mention made of mechanics, that is a repair shops, and also auto body shops. A number of the vehicles and so on has been functioning on the road for the past couple of weeks. Basically, they're just running basically on their own street for the past couple of weeks. The fact that mechanics are not part of the essential services. What would happen if, in the event that a vehicle got broken down or so, would they be allowed to come and repair? Vehicle need parts and so on, would they be allowed to access those parts? So I would really like some response in that regard. I don't know if I should ask my second question, or should I wait till Mr. Van
Let me address that one. As I said earlier, the focus is on food and finance. I am aware that in order for food to get around, and also for essential services, that they are going to need vehicles. Arrangements have been made with the major suppliers that those essential services access, and there are many, small and large, to allow for the emergency in the time being, to allow for the emergency. But we do need to maintain the focus on food and finance, and allow the exception where necessary, to make sure that our ambulances, our police cars, our bank workers, our essential service workers, our food delivery vehicles are able to be serviced wherever necessary. But it is going to be on a case-by-case and out of a necessity, as opposed to a carte blanche.
So thank you for that explanation. What I'm not too, because a lot of those services that you mentioned, to get to access those services, if your vehicle is not functioning, it doesn't make any sense either. So while I understand your point and the need to maintain certain restrictions, the vehicle needs to be functional to get to access or to get to those points.
You have a question?
My second.
Your second question, go ahead. We've lost him.
Yeah.
Johnson.
My second question.
Okay,
Go ahead. Second question, so as to would you see at some point in the coming weeks a relax in accessing playing field in a controlled, structured manner, given the importance of sunlight to accessing vitamin D and the whole body developing that body resistance, right? That whole chemistry that would be able to fight the corona disease and so on. Would you see a relaxed persons who wishing to do their exercise and exposing themselves to sunlight and so on? Would you see that as similar to the case as done now in Florida? Maybe not at that scale, but at a control level.
Well, two things. One, I'm not inclined to use the word relaxing. It has different implications or so, but I did also in my opening remarks speak to the fact that we're very cognizant of the effects this has had on the Grenadian psyche of our people as well. And as health officials, exactly what you were mentioning are primary concerns of ours as well. We have had to regrettably take the risk of not having our people have that essential exercise time, outdoor time, sunlight, vitamin time to ensure that our people aren't dying from COVID-19. And again, what other countries are doing or other states or so are doing, I am not privy to their discussions and their rationale or so. I know that our team has made certain decisions that have been science-based, based on our interpretation of the science and our desire to bring us to exactly where we are now as best as possible, which is 0 deaths. And what we are seeing is the onward victory against this battle with respect to the state of Grenada. I give all of my best regards and hope and expectations for everybody else, all the other countries, that they too will achieve a victory against COVID-19, but I cannot comment positively or negatively on them because each situation is unique.
I want to make a comment because I am getting the feeling that different people are going to try to make a case, so to speak, to have more people be offered to move. Make no mistake, the fact that we're here is because we have restricted movement. My encouragement to the population is to do not make cases for more movement. Let us go the incremental way we're going now, because we have demonstrated that the incremental movement is what has brought us here. Let us follow this and don't lose sight of this. When we are satisfied that more movement should be allowed, we are going to be able to say so. But from our epidemiological and surveillance mechanism, we would not want more movement than what is currently being allowed.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. While I have you on the floor, AG, I think you wanted to weigh in on this discussion right here?
Yes. In regard to the question, the last questions, in relation to movement, to allowing mechanics, for instance, to operate, and paying very careful attention to Dr. Martin's last comment, this is a matter of a balance between going back to normalcy and a balance against the restrictions which are imposed. And from a legal standpoint, we do have the mechanism in place that was in place for the last 3 weeks and will be in place next week to allow, acting under the advice of Cabinet, to allow necessary exceptions to be allowed. Yes? So that facility, that legislative allowance will still continue to operate. And if it is necessary to utilize it, it will be utilized.
I must say kudos to our mechanics, simply because I've not seen a lot of broken down vehicles on the roadside. So kudos to our mechanics out there.
Dr. Martin, I have a question here from Linda Straker regarding the rapid test that we have. What is the length of time that you have to wait for the result? How rapid is the rapid test?
The test can be given to you within 15 minutes or after 15 minutes, so to speak.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from the floor? Mikey, I see your hand up. You may proceed. Mikey?
Okay, the Attorney General earlier spoke of the opening of ports. Just that we do not have any sort of ambiguity, can he elaborate a bit more on that for us, please?
AG, did you hear the question from Mikey Hutchinson?
I wasn't very clear on it.
Maybe I can assist with the answer to that. Our ports have remained open in terms of our seaports to receive cargo and our airport to receive cargo. so Amerijet, DHL, FedEx for airports, and our various cargo vessels have been coming into our port, bringing in food, bringing in other items that we import. The port, in terms of on the other side of the port to the public, to date, that has been specifically for food and essential products, so medical and food. And we also did allow and will continue to allow where there is a complete container that belongs to an establishment for that to move, so that we don't jeopardize and risk too much the actual port workers and individuals who may have to unpack containers and then have individuals coming to the gates or the premises of the port to get their goods, whether it is small or large goods, but not necessarily a full container. We don't want to go much longer with this, because we realize people need their goods and should have access to it, whether it is for trade or whether it is personal. But we need to make sure that when we allow that during a safe period. And we're not quite at that safe period yet. Once we can maintain that patience for those who are waiting their products and that discipline, then that safe period will come and we will be able to access our goods.
Minister, maybe you can help with this question. Bank employees, are they allowed to work on the Tuesday, Thursday in preparation for the additional open banking days?
Well, in all of the services or entities that we have given permission to open on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we're very much aware that there is a certain amount of restocking or planning or back office work, so to speak, that needs to be done. So yes, they would have that ability, if so requested by their management, their establishment, etc. So I know for sure, with respect to the groceries and supermarkets and shops all over the island, yes, they are able to receive products on the off days, and the distributors are allowed to. So if that is also necessary for financial institutions, then yes, that would be something that the Commissioner would be prepared to allow, and in essence what the Cabinet and what we have agreed to in essence with the science would allow or cater for that.
Thank you, Minister. Nancy Maguire, you have another question? Sherry, I'll take your question after Nancy's.
Yes, thank you. I just want to go back a minute to the testing of police officers and our healthcare workers. Is there some strategy as to determine who is being tested, or is this a random testing?
Fortunately for us, we do have a nice manageable population that we do not need to worry too much about this. And at this point in time, caller, reporter, we are simply open. Anybody who thinks that they have an issue. As a matter of fact, our frontline health workers have already, those who are tested and those who continue to work, they've already dedicated themselves to it. I was quite appalled. They give themselves to it and said, doctor, I don't necessarily want to get tested right now because I'll be going back to the same to take care of my patients anyway, and I'm not unwell. I'm fine. So some of our health workers have elected to test when they finish working with that period of time, when they finish working with the isolated patients, and get tested around that time. And really, my heart goes up for them for that selfless service that they've been given. And so for the police officers as well, I have reached out to the necessary high-ranking officers and allowed them, and alert them that we are open, and that any of their rank and file who feels that they were in contact or have symptoms or needs to get tested, they can come in. So the point I'm making here, we are literally open and we're able to do the test, and anyone who feels that they need to get a test done, they can get in contact with us.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Sherry Ann?
Yes, thank you. My questions are for the Attorney General. I just want him to clarify for the benefit of a few business owners. When he mentioned restaurants and he said takeaway service, there are a couple small, what do we call them, food shops in St. George's that would like to know whether they fall under that category. And he also mentioned about Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as shopping days. Just clarity as to when will be restocking days. And finally, there are some people asking if a timeline can be given as to how soon you would see inter-island travel, meaning between Grenada, Carriacou.
Thank you for that question. The clarity on the way forward will be continued to be provided on a timely basis. I'm sure there's quite a lot being said in this press conference. Persons will get a chance to look at it again afterwards on the various platforms. In relation to restaurants, we haven't given any restriction to say whether they're small or huge or big or large restaurants, nothing at all. So persons who have these little shops cooking food will be allowed to operate. Of course, no one will be allowed to eat at these premises. And of course, you will have to continue to maintain the rules and the protocol of social distancing. So once these things are observed, these restaurants will be allowed to operate and for takeaway purposes. In relation to restocking, I believe the minister has already dealt with this point. This will be approached in a practical basis. Persons will be allowed to do restocking. They will make contact with the Commissioner of Police to, of course, ensure that they're able to travel on those days. For instance, bakeries. I understand the bakers will come out very early in the morning, sometimes 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, to begin baking for the morning start, whilst the curfew is lifted at 5 o'clock. These persons will be allowed to come out and start doing their work in time for the shopping day. So there will be there has been a practical approach to this all along, and this practical approach will continue to facilitate this return to normalcy. Thank you.
If I can just add, I know that the question had spoken to Carriacou as well. I mean, I was up there myself, and I know that there's a regular movement of vessels between Carriacou and Grenada for restocking of food and other essential materials. With respect to passenger movement, I know that the people of Carriacou themselves have made a concerted effort on their own to say that we're going to stay in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. We may go from between Carriacou and Petit Martinique, but we're going to stay where we are. So I leave that up to them in the same way that I'm saying that within the shopping days movement between the parishes. The people of Carriacou, when I last spoke to them, and they were quite happy to stay there. If there is a need or desire, I'm sure with coordination it can be accommodated wherever necessary, if there's a need or desire for individuals to move back and forth. But I think they're quite happy now where we're staying their beautiful lifestyle up there.
Minister, would you allow me to add that I did accompany you on that trip to Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and I recall very vividly, very clearly, that one woman said to me, we really don't want anybody to come here right now. And that woman was actually worried that even police officers who were coming up there to protect them, she said, okay, no, leave those who are there. We're going to walk with who are there. That sort of like protective they were. So, in due course, of course, understanding what is happening here, I think that might change. But so far, they are very comfortable with what has been done. And I did hear the minister say yesterday that she and the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique would like to be, or go down in history, as the place where COVID never set foot. So thus far, let us open up to Carriacou and Petit Martinique in accordance to their wishes.
Dr. Mitchell, while we're on the subject of Carriacou, can you probably provide an update as to testing there, Carriacou and Petit Martinique?
Yes, I don't have numbers for you though, but we did meet with Dr. Davis, our coordinator in Carriacou. We did meet with the folks at the hospital. We had a very nice meeting up there. And we did meet with the nurse in PT Martinique as well. We explained our strategies going forward, and we have provided them with the necessary testing material so that they in turn can do their testing as per our plan going forward. So I am confident that even though we have not had cases in Carriacou, that they would not be left out in terms of ensuring that, that kind of upscaling of the testing is done.
Let me add to that because, again, I've been keeping the track of 500 rapid tests went up to Carriacou. And I know that Dr. Davis and the team have swabs should they need to or feel the need to do rapid tests. And arrangements have been made with Coast Guard when necessary to bring those samples down for them to be tested in Grenada should the need arise. But to date, the team in Carriacou have not had the need, as far as they're concerned, to do PCR testing for anyone in Carriacou. But the 500 tests, rapid tests, are up there for them to do their screening in coordination with Dr. Martin and Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Minister. I know some time was allowed for funerals during the past week. Will that also happen during the coming week?
That will be allowed following the same guidelines of not more than 10. It is one of the more difficult restrictions that we've had to place on our people. And thankfully, to date, the majority, if not all of the families, have been most understanding. It is also one of the reasons that we need to just endure this a little longer so that we can get back to some of our traditions that we hold near and dear, which are in particular funerals and weddings. I think there are quite a couple of weddings that may have been deferred or postponed. And also, let me take this opportunity to wish whoever may have been fortunate enough to be celebrating another year, but unfortunate to have been doing it during this lockdown period. I'm sure you two are looking forward to that time when you can exhale and celebrate belated or have belated birthday celebration. So we need to just focus on why we're doing this and that there is an end to this. And that the end is near, and we are approaching it, and it will all be worthwhile once we get there.
Thank you, Minister. I think this question here from Rena Pear will be for one of the medical practitioners. What about pregnant women with underlying conditions like diabetes who will need regular checks at clinics? How are they able to get those checks?
The health facilities were open as normal. And once there were no emergencies, they were able to be seen. Fortunately for us, we have seen no untoward outcomes, and that patients were able to be seen when necessary and haven't had any issues. What is also fortunate for us is that globally we have not seen the virus causing significant sickness in the youthful population, in the children population, and also pregnant women population. That being said, there is still a protocol and a guideline to guide how we treat pregnant women and children. But we've been very fortunate worldwide that it hasn't affected those populations as such. Our health facilities have always been open. So in the event that a pregnant woman needed services, they were available.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Johnson, you have another question?
Yes. Yes. My question is relative to Grenada's readiness or preparedness. I know we basically in a position where we say we a minimal number of cases on the island. But as it relates to ventilation, I know somebody more established and organized health system around the world, if we follow the news and so on, have been struggling to cope with ventilation and so on. What is Grenada's position? How prepared are we in the event that there's an upsurge in the number of cases on the island? Are we prepared and ready with respect to ventilation to deal with such an upsurge?
I assume that you're speaking of mechanical ventilation because that is what the whole issue has been. Now, let me be clear about a few things. We did some, of course, look at the epidemiology of what's happening around the world and the need for ventilators and so on. We did some initial modeling that gives us an indication as to really and truly how much ventilators that we need to be able to adequately provide services if for what reason or the other there is a widespread outbreak on the island. We've done, the top numbers and the bottom numbers to make a decision. And we believe that we were able, and we still are able, based on what we see and what we expected. In terms of the numbers of mechanical ventilators that we have, I think we've done extremely well to be able to have the numbers that we have. And based on what we thought might happen, we think we are ready and we have enough ventilators to be able to do that mechanically. However, let's always also be very, very clear about what's happening around the world. If what happened around the world happens in Grenada, there is no country with a number of ventilators to be able to put on mechanical ventilation all these levels of people. But based on the robust work that we put up earlier, we thought that if something still happened, we probably would need, somewhere, 10, 15 or so. And we're capable. We're right there and we're able to do that. So I'm happy with that for now. I want to also say that, listen, the science is changing, And the science is now beginning to demonstrate that probably mechanical ventilation is not what patients needed. And so this whole issue of having hundreds of mechanical ventilation may not be. It is looking more like the lungs is behaving as someone who've had altitude sickness, which is not mechanical ventilation they need. So we're open to that as well. We're ahead of it. And we want to make sure that if it happens to us, at least we have other modalities that we'll be able to offer care for rather than reliance on mechanical ventilation.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Mikey, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks again. Now that we are revising or relaxing restrictions and opening up businesses and services on a tiered basis, and I guess that's based on how essential that service is, where does construction work fall on that scale?
Mikey, like I said earlier, all of the various sectors, there's a need. All sectors contribute to the economy. In the past, in some of our darkest moments in the past, we have seen that the construction industry is one of the tested by time ways of rebuilding an economy. So I look forward to that as well, to be able to make that announcement as to when that day will come. And I do believe that day is soon. What we need to focus on is I think getting through this week with the acknowledgement. You've heard me come to the press and do press conferences many times during this period. But you have also heard the doctors here, and you are hearing us speak with an optimistic note. You are hearing us speak of the better days that are coming. You are hearing us speak of the light at the end of the tunnel, and it is there. So the question of construction can easily be the question of any other sector. Once we follow the science, and once we follow, as I've said earlier, we follow the humanity, the finance, and the food part, and the rest can fall in line very quickly after that, provided that we maintain the discipline of the social distancing and the face cover, and that we do not take the fact that we have been enclosed and restricted for a long time, the freedom of movement for granted. Because very easily it can be reversed. So I am sure now that we are speaking with a positive note, they will be clamoring from all sectors to open. But we've got to make sure that we do not take it for granted, that we do this in a systematic way. And once we do it that way, as each and every sector opens, that opening, by the grace of God, will be permanent and not temporary, with the unwanted reconfinement or so.
Thank you, Minister. Akisha, you have the floor.
Just to follow up to Nancy's question before, as it relates to the individual who would have went back to the United Kingdom, based on the response given, would you say now that the matter is put to rest? And are pharmacists on islands being tested?
I think I've implied earlier, as far as I'm concerned, the matter is not put to rest. The individual broke the quarantine law in the state of Grenada, but when we have more time to think of it and consider it, and also we have to remain as humane individuals and understand that individual inadvertently caught a virus, and that I do hope, despite all that the individual may have done, that the individual has recovered and is healthy. Once we all recover from this, we can deal with those issues if we still choose to.
With regards to the question of pharmacies being tested, I have personal knowledge of pharmacy being tested, and pharmacies are going to continue to be tested, and we're open to test any one of them once they come forward.
Can we have an update on the state of health of the remaining COVID patients?
Yes, I actually just got a report from, and I think we all got it, so we're quite happy to announce that we only have one patient at our COVID center now. One of the two patients that was there as of this morning has just been released from our COVID center at the General Hospital. And all patients still remain relatively stable, and there has been no decline in their conditions. And so kudos to the team there led by Dr. Dolan Noel to have been able to not just treat them, but to treat them with a positive result.
I want to say one other thing, though. The current patient that we have was admitted not because the patient was unwell or sick. It was because we know of what could have happened given the condition of the patient. Out of an abundance of caution, we have this patient to come in. Still very stable and maybe, living very soon, but it's not. We really do expect a good outcome from that situation as well.
Excellent. Do we have the capacity to test someone for the antibodies of the virus to tell if they had it without knowing and recovered?
That's correct. The test that we're using is an antibody test with a specificity of 99-point-something%. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, I think we are coming upon time where we can wrap up. I'll invite you, each of you, to leave us with some closing statements. Dr. Mitchell?
Yes, I'll go first. I can't leave here without going back and thanking the public for being, in the main, very responsive to what we have suggested to them in terms of controlling this virus. We know it was extremely difficult times, but we are getting a little bit more optimistic. I want to particularly, though, as Minister said, as Dr. Martin has said, thank our frontline workers. They have been really, really, really outstanding at this time. And there are quite a few persons who have come to me and said, Dr. Mitchell, we are also frontline workers. So I want to thank them as well. I want to thank the folks at the customs, those who work at the airport, our environmental health workers. I want to thank our pharmacists who have said that here we are in the background doing what we have to do. So it's a myriad of persons that we want to thank. There are loads of persons out there who have come forward as well and say, you guys are doing a great job. Persons who have criticized us and point to things that they suggest that we would do or can do better. I want to thank them as well. They have been really, really, it has been an outpouring of support. I've got texts from people who I don't know. I want to thank them. But at the same time, I want to hasten to say that we are really not out of the woods as yet. I want to admonish, I want to ensure that what we are doing is and I want to say that what we are doing is in the best interest. Minister has mentioned it several times. I want to mention it again, that we are hastening, but we are hastening slowly to ensure that we have no regrets in terms of what we do. We want to get it right the first time. So I would yield to Dr. Martin to do his closing remarks, and once again, thanks to everybody.
Thanks very much again to the population. There is a lady out there with 8 children, and 6 of those are on the front lines as we moment. So we want to say kudos to that lady. I think she knows who she is. 6 out of 8 children are on the front line in this COVID case. What we have done, the sacrifice that we all made, is a sacrifice in the investment of the future of this country and for what we want this country to go forward. Don't clamor for any more. Let us stay the course, because if we do that very well and we do not have an outbreak here, eventually this investment will pay out in terms of our future and the wealth of our people. So thank you for this confidence that you've shown in our work, and we are even more confident that you're going to continue to support us as we go forward with this COVID response.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. AG, let's come to you before we take the final comment from Minister Steele.
Thank you very much. On the way forward, ensure each of us, we all understand the restrictions. Where you are in doubt, please make inquiries. Continue to look at the news, the GIS, the Ministry of Health Facebook page. I ask the media to continue to be responsible, practice social journalism. I remain accessible. We will provide information. The list that you heard us speak about will be published. I must say at this point that the restrictions that we have imposed in law have all been consistent with the Constitution and the allowable limitations. The courts have continued to operate to deal with offenders. They are accessible. The frontline workers and the police force have been exceptional. But I call on all of us, all of you, all of us, to assist law enforcement and all those frontline workers and all other persons who have been and will be working to serve the need of all of us. Frustrations will exist. Continue to exercise patience. I also wish to express the gratitude of the government to the members of the bar, the court system, the judges, the staff of the courts, chief magistrates and the other magistrates and their staff who have been continuously working. They are accessible, dealing with matters, important matters in this time. I wish to also express gratitude to the work that is being done by my team at Legal Affairs to get these regulations out, and all of those persons who have been supporting each of us and each other in our community and our country. Thank you very much. Please continue to be vigilant. Take precautions. Wear a mask if you go out, and take all other measures to be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, AG. Minister?
If I can start by expressing gratitude to some of our other members who have been serving us, the essential service workers, the utility workers, the port workers, customs, inland revenue, government, public servants who have been behind the scenes making sure that the various wheels of this country continue to move. I have a team of amazing advisors with me. We call it our COVID-19 advisory team. My cabinet colleagues too, that have been there to give support wherever possible. The Prime Minister for having the foresight and leadership, not just here in Grenada, but throughout the region in the various roles that he has assumed. So all of our people, our private security guards that are out there behind the scenes, making sure that all of the private companies that are closed now remain safe and sound, and they are the ones pulling these graveyard shifts, so to speak, and yeoman service without any public transportation around. So I want to also express appreciation to them and to say that by all appearances, this storm called COVID-19 is passing. that by all appearances the worst is behind us, and that there are better days in front of us. But in order to make sure that that is the case, we must make sure that we remain diligent, that we follow the rules, that we remain united as a people. We will look back, I am sure, we will look back at this period that we are going through now and know that this is when we became stronger as a nation. And finally to say, I think undeniably our frontline healthcare workers and RGPF have earned the respect and the gratitude of this nation.
Thank you very much, Minister Steele, and to the other gentlemen who were part of our panel here this afternoon for this press conference. Dr. Martin, the acting CMO, our COVID-19 response coordinator, Dr. Mitchell, and the Attorney General, Mr. Dashon Ramdani. Thank you so much. I am sure many of you out there who have been tuned into this press conference, having heard about the relaxed regulations that will come into effect next week. Now, you may be happy to hear it, but it's not business as usual. Let us please remember that. You are still asked to move with purpose, to do whatever it is that you need to do, and to maintain social distancing. It is the key, one of the critical keys in the success in the fight against COVID. So let us not forget that as we go about our business next week. Thank you so much for tuning into this press conference. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. I'll see you again next time.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new national party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.
Prime Minister reiterates fiscal responsibility as key to government's ability to provide COVID-19 stimulus package. Details of this story and more in the National Report. Welcome back. With the details to the news for Friday, April 17, 2020, I am Sherian Noel. Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Dr. the Right Honourable Keith Mitchell, has reiterated government's demonstrated fiscal responsibility over the last few years as the primary factor that now enables it to provide relief for those most affected by the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Addressing Friday's special sitting of the House of Representatives, Dr. Mitchell said the measures outlined in the COVID-19 economic stimulus package announced by the government are only possible because of the vast improvements made in the management of the local economy. These improvements were manifested through 7 consecutive years of economic growth, a significant reduction in unemployment, and 5 consecutive years of surpluses.
Fiscal space and fiscal resilience were recurrent themes as we sought to exercise prudent financial management. It is only this prudent financial management and adhering to fundamental rules, Mr. Speaker, that could be responsible for our ability to provide some opportunity and support to our people in this period of greatest need.
The Prime Minister provided some additional details about the stimulus package, including an unemployment benefits package of about $10 million to be rolled out by the National Insurance Scheme. Reductions in the interest rate for the small hoteliers facility operated by the Grenada Development Bank from 3.5% to 2%, and the soft loan facility accessed through the Small Business Fund from 6% to 3%. Dr. Mitchell used the opportunity to appeal to businesses and individuals who are in a position to help others to do so.
As a responsible government, while we cannot support everyone, we must provide relief to those hardest hit. Mr. Speaker, I make this point and I want to elaborate. Because there is a perception, Mr. Speaker, that the government must help, must give all of us what we want. And those of us who are in positions to deal with the problems of the day, even turning to government and saying, what is there for me? There's some of us who have done well financially in the last several years, whether it's in the business field, in the construction sector, the retail sector, but you're calling to ask, what can government do? Do like John Kennedy. What can I do for my country at this stage?
Moving along, the government of Grenada is pumping an additional $10 million into the budget for the Ministry of Health as it continues to spearhead the fight against COVID-19. The additional sum announced by Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Dr. the Right Honourable Keith Mitchell, at Friday's special sitting of the House of Representatives, is intended to bolster the ministry's efforts. It is also in addition to the $2 million the Prime Minister announced when Grenada was in the early stages of its fight against the virus. Justifying the additional allocation, Dr. Mitchell said every attempt must be made to bolster the health infrastructure in the midst of the pandemic.
$10 million is added to the budget of the Ministry of Health to procure protective gear and equipment for frontline workers and additional testing materials and other items that may be necessary. This country owes a great debt to our essential workers like that of our healthcare practitioners, those who have come forward in this time. Not all have done it, but those who have come forward, we owe them enormous amount. We cannot pay them for their sacrifices.
Good news for Grenada as the country fights to keep COVID-19 at bay. Health Minister Honorable Nicholas Steele announced in Parliament on Friday that 6 COVID-19 patients have fully recovered.
Yesterday, we tested 11 more individuals or received results for 11. All 11 were negative. But Mr. Speaker, most importantly, of those 11, 6 of them were individuals who had previously tested positive. So we can most definitely declare that of the 14 individuals who tested positive in the state of Grenada, 6 of them have officially recovered.
Minister Steele says although the news of the recovered cases are welcome, it is still not the time to take the virus for granted. He said opening the ports and borders too quickly can lead to a relapse in cases and an extension of the state of emergency. The Ministry of Health is working closely with the government and other agencies to ensure that checks are made before a decision can be made to return to normalcy.
The last case that we identified was April 10th. We do have some time still in order to be sure, but we have been doing testing, and while those tests, like most of the other tests that exist, rapid tests, are not fully certified, we use them as a screening process. Not the definitive conclusion, but a screening process. And we still, as I announced, continue to do the PCR testing that is accepted by WHO and PAHO. So these tests that we received are used to screen in the same way that in the beginning we were screening based on persons' temperatures and symptoms. We now have an additional tool to help screen our population. We do have other tests on the way that will be the authority that we can use to confirm, and not just a screening test, but just as reliable as the PCR tests that we are using.
He thanked the local doctors and nurses, the government of the people of Cuba and Venezuela, for their assistance during this time. Minister Steele encouraged Grenadians to adhere to the guidelines and protocols in place and gave the assurance that better days are ahead. This is the National Report. More news after the break.
Protect yourself and our community from COVID-19. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with at least 70% alcohol. Use a tissue when blowing your nose, sneezing, or coughing. Immediately discard the tissue properly and wash or sanitize your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Let's do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. To stay up to date, visit the Government of Grenada's webpage or the Ministry of Health's Facebook page. For more information, contact the Ministry of Health's hotline by calling 53-VIRUS. This has been a public service announcement brought to you by the Ministry of Health.
Welcome back. The diaspora community must be commended for their support and assistance to Grenada during the fight against COVID-19. Addressing the lower house on Friday, Foreign Affairs Minister Honorable Peter David said it is commendable that every country is grappling with the effects of the coronavirus, but still find time and make resources available to assist.
We must really keep them in our prayers. Over 40 Grenadians, Mr. Speaker, died in New York alone. And in the United Kingdom, many more are dying. We must pay tribute to them. And you know what is fascinating to me? While they are undergoing that, I have received messages from diaspora communities asking what they can do for us in Grenada. That is amazing. Amazing how our diaspora community, despite their own challenges, still thinking of how they can help us here. So I want us to keep them in our prayers, see how we can give their families support here, because many of them have families here who need that support. Thanks to many of our embassies and ambassadors out there in the diaspora, out there in Brussels, in London, in Canada, who are helping us. They have all come together, Mr. Speaker, to help us. So as we fight the disease, as we fight the virus, and there are other people facing the virus, we must always bear in mind that we are not in this alone.
Grenada has received aid from several countries like the People's Republic of China, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and the Republic of Cuba. Minister David said now is the time to lift sanctions so that lives can be saved. He was speaking against the backdrop that several of those international countries are currently dealing with trade sanctions.
This is a time when we should be seeking to support each other, to lift sanctions, as a matter of fact, in the middle of this crisis, so that we can save lives. In Venezuela, it does not matter if you're a supporter or not a supporter of the Bolivarian Revolution, you will suffer from COVID. Similarly in China, similarly in Cuba, in these countries. And you know what is amazing? I want to also use this opportunity to thank the governments of Cuba. The Cuban government sent nurses to Grenada and are about to send doctors to this country. In the face of their own crisis, the government of Cuba is sending assistance not only to us. You look on the television, you realize they're sending assistance to all countries all over the world. Secondly, the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. We got over 3,000 tests last week, some of which we are currently using from Venezuela at a time when they are suffering and they are facing sanctions. And the government and people of China, they gave us supplies, and more supplies are coming from China next week. 3 governments who are subject to sanctions.
And finally in the news, St. Andrew is referred to as the breadbasket of the nation, and farmers there are appreciative of the opportunity to sell their produce at the Grenville Farmers Market, even as the country remains under curfew to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Friday being day 2 of the 3 days allotted for the sale of fresh produce, the farmers, in speaking with the GIS crew, says, however, that they are somewhat concerned about the volume of people that are coming into the farmers market to purchase the produce. They made a plea for a review of the system so that adjustments can be made during the next staging of the farmers market.
We're very grateful for the opportunity in this time, this crisis time now. But it's one problem we are facing now. We have the opportunity to come and sell, but if you look around, there are not very much buyers. So I think something had to be done. I don't know if we could get the buses running for the people to come and buy. Because even though we have a ton of stuff, as you can see, all the farmers have a variety of stuff. But at the end of the day, if you can't get your dollar, you still have a problem. If you can't get people to buy, there is still a problem. So I think the problem is getting people to come here to purchase your stuff.
Well, I would think let the buses run. I know it's a challenge for them too because they have their own issues with the 4 or 5 passengers in the bus because they complain about the gas and it cannot really pay. But still, I think they should give them the opportunity, even though they have to charge $5 passengers, so that we all could benefit from it. Because without the people, we cannot sell. We need them. So I think that is one of the areas we would like them to look at for us, vendors.
Put something in place so everybody could get it done. You know what I mean? Instead of then we have to go out, take it in our hands then, and go and put on the street. One thing slow here, we have to take chicken in our hand, we have to take the eggs in our hand and go on the street to see what we guys sell. When the people are supposed to be coming into the market to purchase. So we see it as a no-no, because nothing will happen really for us.
Chief Extension Officer with the Ministry of Agriculture, Randall Shares, has been assisting with the coordinating of the farmers' market in the various parishes. Shares says it's an excellent initiative by the government through the Ministry of Agriculture and the COVID-19 response team. While many farmers were hoping for a greater influx of customers, he says that is because of the system in place.
It's an excellent initiative. Farmers, yesterday we had 23 farmers and vendors. Today we have 39 farmers and vendors. So we've seen a drastic increase in the number of persons that we had today. In terms of the persons coming to purchase stuff, you would not find a large crowd coming at the same time, because if you look at what is happening in the banks and at MoneyGram and so on, people are being released, 2 by 2, 1 by 1, and so on. And that's how just as how they trickle off from the banks and from the Western Union and so on, that's how they trickle into the market. So you find from around 8 o'clock to up to 5 o'clock, they will just trickle into the market. You wouldn't see a big crowd coming into the market.
Mr. Shez says the concerns of the farmers will be addressed when a feedback is given to the team on the 3 days designated for the sale of fresh produce. The number of farmers present at the farmers market on Friday increased from the number that came out on Thursday. And with that story, we come to the end of the National Report for Friday, April 17th, 2020. On behalf of the entire news and production team, I am Sherry Noel, thanking you for viewing.
So glad to see you. You see, I've been thinking about this case between government and Grenadier, and I need to better understand a few things. You see, some people say government to Grenadier to court, and others say Grenadier to government to court, and he say, she say. So who really took who to court?
I know it can be confusing, Suzanne, but it is simple. If you study the ruling from the court hearing which took place in Washington, it clearly says that WRB, the company that owns Grenadier, took government to court.
So why Grenadier decided to take government to court?
For what it's worth, government decided to change the law so that the price of electricity can be cheaper for Grenadians. I guess the company felt that they would no longer be making the fat profit if people are paying less for electricity, as when they had full control over price and everything else. So guess what? The company decided that they wanted government to take back the company. They took government to court and demanded that the people of Grenada must buy back the company and pay them a sizable amount too. But you know what? They could only have done this because of the contract that the NDC government signed in 1994, that if any government passed any law to make the price of electricity cheaper, the state had to buy back the shares.
Interesting. You see, that's why I always trust you to explain these things, making it simple for me to understand.
So what WRB wants government to do is to buy back all the shares that the NDC government sold them in 1994. The contract they signed with the NDC government then does not allow any competition, which is why our rates are so high. And what is worse, the then government agreed with them that if government had to buy back the shares, the price would have to be a lot more than it is worth, and the company must decide the selling price.
Pure manje popo. That was a real giveaway, man.
You hit the nail on the head, Susan. Government has no choice based on the court ruling. The court said that Grenada has to pay this foreign-based company based on the contract the NDC government signed in 1994. But guess what? Even if the NDC administration signed this bad deal, I'm happy that the NNP administration is prepared to pay up. And credit must be given to them that just a few days after the court ruled, government has already announced that our electricity bill will be reduced by 30% for the next 3 months because of COVID-19. My dear, all things work together for good.
I can't agree with you more. I fully agree.
I think government should just pay Grenleg their money based on what the court says. And let's keep moving on to cheaper electricity costs. Remember, we have the highest electricity rates in the region.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new National Party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.